This is Tigray Mass Media Agency. A very warm welcome. I'm Lalim Thechano with today's headlines. With today's news. In August, Human Rights Watch had released its reports on the mass and arbitrary detention of Tigrayans living across different parts of Ethiopia, including the capital, Addis Ababa. The new wave of mass arrest had started following the recapturing of Tigray's capital, Mekelle, by Tigray's forces. The mass detention and forced disappearance of Tigrayans has only become more intense in the past weeks, and especially following the declaration of nationwide state of emergency that allows government authorities the right to search and to detain anyone that they, for any reason, suspect to be associated with parties declared as terrorists by the Ethiopian government. For more, Abel reports.
Last week, the Ethiopian government declared a state of emergency, empowering Ethiopian authorities indefinitely detain anyone they suspect of collaborating with a terrorist group. The qualifications that Amnesty International called a blueprint for escalating human rights violations, including arbitrary detentions.
ምክንያታዊ በሆነ መንገድ የጠረጠረው ምክንያታዊ በሆነ መልክ የጠረጠረውን ማንኛውንም ሰው
If any police officer should find any person reasonably suspect, that officer has the full authority to detain or search the suspect without a court order and may seize any weapon even if it was legally obtained.
Tigrayans have so far been stopped and arrested on streets, taken from their homes and place of work, initially taken to police stations and later transferred to unidentified locations. The Ethiopian government itself has admitted to the detention and illegal holding of 17,000 Tigrayans, members of Ethiopia's National Defense Forces, with the number from civilians feared to be several folds higher. Another resident of Addis, who wants to remain anonymous, in a phone call to Tigray television, told our reporters that his life and that of his loved ones has been endangered. The mass and arbitrary detention of Tigrayans, as well as the closing of Tigrayan-owned business, has gone on for well over a year, with Tigrayan families and friends across the world anxiously awaiting to hear from loved ones arbitrarily taken by Ethiopian authorities.
Yesterday, the Ethiopian government blocked various social media outlets and messaging apps, including Facebook and Telegram, in some parts of Ethiopia that still have telecom services. Although the Ethiopian government claims the blockade happened after national exam papers surfaced online, the Ministry of Education is disputing this claim, saying that there are no confirmed reports of leaked exam reports. Much of Tigray has been disconnected not only from access to internet, but also from all forms of phone communication for over a year now. Fanny Limuru reports.
According to NetBlock, the Ethiopian government blocked social media and messaging apps such as Facebook and Telegram. This is just one of the latest in repeated attempts by the government of Ethiopia to limit access of information. The official spokesperson for the government of Ethiopia has claimed that the blockade happened after national exam papers started to surface online. The Ministry of Education later released a statement saying that there had been no confirmed reports of leaks. In an attempt to limit information coming out of Tigray, the Ethiopian government discontinued access to internet internet services in Tigray over a year ago, with much of Tigray unable to get access to phone services. Tigray has been under a complete communication blackout since the end of June, with a complete shutdown of all communication in and out of Tigray. Parts of Amhara region and Afar have also been affected, but with mobile data being shut in much of this region. The discontinuation of internet services has happened repeatedly in the past 3 years, with the last nationwide communication blackout happening on June of 2020, following the assassination of Hachalu Hundessa. Since early January, access to internet and mobile network services has also been shut down in large parts of Western Oromia.
On November 8, 2021, the Central Committee for Tigray People's Liberation Front released a statement on current affairs after the committee held its regular meeting to review current events. The statement calls on the international community to do its part to ensure that perpetrators of atrocities in Tigray are held accountable. Adagawi Garo Mikael reports.
Central Committee for Tigray People's Liberation Front releases a statement on current affairs after the committee held its regular meeting to review current events. The statement recognizes 1 year since the open declaration of genocide against the people of Tigray by Ethiopian and Eritrean forces, and says that the aggression had been preceded by over 3 years of misinformation and hate speech against the people of Tigray, working to undermine the dignity of the people and expose them to both physical and mental harm. The statement says that atrocities committed on the people of Tigray in the past year were done in an attempt to silence the people's will to exercise their rights of self-governance, saying that it was this attempt to impose tyrannical rule that demanded the people of Tigray put aside all differences and mobilize to fight against fascist enemies. The Central Committee statement states that the party and its leadership have developed strategies and tactics to ensure that the armed resistance is able to achieve its objectives and protect the people of Tigray from the threat of its oppressors. The statement emphasized that the people of Tigray and their ruling party were engaging in a just war to defend their rights of existence and will continue to do so until the well-being of the people of Tigray is secured. The statement calls on relevant stakeholders to continue to support the resistance as the conflict is reaching its final chapter. The Central Committee statement thanks international partners that have been a voice to the people of Tigray in the past year and asks them to continue to support the Tigray's cause to ensure all perpetrators of the genocide in Tigray are held accountable. The statement called for independent investigation to take place on atrocities committed in Tigray and for all international actors to play their role to ensure that justice is served. The statement also addresses the nation's nationalities and people of Ethiopia, saying that they should play their part for the downfall of Abiy Ahmed's regime, saying that young men and women should not be sacrificed for the purpose of extending the lifespan of a fascist regime.
Tigray's Bureau of Health has reported that over 80% of Tigray's health facilities have been looted or vandalized, leading to the complete collapse of Tigray's health system. Our reporters were on the ground at Adi Arbate in the central zone of Tigray, where they were able to observe how the destruction of local health facility has affected the community, especially pregnant women and children. Abraha Gabriel reports on that.
Reports from Tigray Bureau of Health indicate that over 80% of health facilities in Tigray were looted and destroyed during the 8-month-long occupation of Tigray by Ethiopian and Eritrean forces, endangering the lives of millions, especially mothers and children. Birshwa Primary Hospital, found in Adarbata Woreda in the central zone of Tigray, is one of the many health facilities looted and vandalized by Eritrean troops.
My name is Kidan Fsaha. I am temporarily working as a coordinator at the hospital. Eritrean troops practically destroyed this hospital when they first came into the area. The damage is multidimensional. Much of our equipment has either been destroyed or looted.
My name is Dr. Debesa Abrahalle. I am a general practitioner at Birshwa Hospital. The hospital was attacked by Eritrean troops when they first invaded the area. It is difficult to say. We are providing any medical service here. Children and mothers are suffering. We refer many of our patients to other hospitals because we don't have medication, and we are also not able to perform surgeries, and the patients don't have any money for transport, so mothers are forced to deliver at home. Many mothers are dying because of complications during birth, such as bleeding. Children suffering from malnutrition are not able to get medical care here. we have already lost 4 children.
Mothers say they are denied of the medical service they used to get before at different stages of their pregnancy period, at birth and after birth. As a result, they are exposed to different birth complications and their newborns are facing severe health abnormalities. Reports from the Bureau of Health indicate that medical care for pregnant mothers has been affected severely as it sharply declined from more than 80% performance rate to below 30% and even far lower in the past 4 months because of the siege.
I am here to deliver my child, but as you can see, there is no hope. All the beds are taken and the rest are broken. There is no mattress. I gave birth here before and the delivery room was well equipped and the midwifery wards were complete. You can compare the facility now to the way it was previously. Now the doctors just give us oral consultations because they can't examine us properly. They don't have the necessary equipment. I gave birth to my baby on November 14, 2020. I gave birth on the field because the Eritrean soldiers were shelling our community. He hasn't taken any breast milk since he was born. I don't know why. Maybe there are some complications because I gave birth alone without medical assistance. He is not receiving any medical assistance even now. As you can see, the hospital has been looted. It can no longer provide care.
Bershwa Hospital has now completely run out of medicine and medical equipment because of the siege on Tigray that has not only discontinued all basic services but also blocked aid and medical supplies coming into Tigray.
The hospital has completely run out of all types of medications. This is especially affecting patients with chronic illness such as diabetics and those suffering from hypertension. It is been months since we ran out of these medications.
We are not giving vaccinations to newborns and children. Children are exposed to illnesses. There is also a high rate of stunting.
The siege on Tigray has meant that health facilities in Tigray are not able to recover and start providing medical care for the many in need. It is to be recalled that before the start of the war on November 2020, Tigray's health system had been one of the best in the developing world.
There are currently over 2.2 million internally displaced people across Tigray, with over 1 million of them being displaced from western Tigray, where Amhara militia committed ethnic cleansing. Now, as the siege on Tigray continues to tighten, stocks of medical supplies have been completely depleted, leaving IDP with very limited options. For more, Haile Gabu reports.
Following the unjust war declared and the year-long siege imposed in Tigray, IDPs sheltered in different camps in Meghaleh city are suffering from extreme hunger, of whom children are in a desperate situation in Srawat IDP center due to lack of food. Parents and guardians of the victim children called on the international community for help.
There is no transportation, no communication at all. Everything has been closed. Here, we are adults and children who have chronic illnesses. We have nowhere to go. Children are physically emaciated due to lack of food. We have mothers who can't resist hunger during delivery period. We know mothers who have gone to some areas freed from the conflict to give birth back at their home. However, we heard that they have passed away due to hunger.
Both children and adults who are suffering from chronic diseases such as diabetes, cancer, liver, hypertension, and asthma are at the brink of this due to the lack of food supply.
We have stayed for some days without food and water. When we first displaced from the place where we used to live in, we were caring for our children and relatives who are suffering from diabetes. And now we are also leading a devastating life. Therefore, we call on the international community to take appropriate measure over Abiy Ahmed's regime to open up all the humanitarian coordinates into Tigray.
Some youths who are organized under the charity association named Hidruna were trying to help by collecting resources from different generous bodies. However, due to the communication blackout in Tigray, they couldn't mobilize resources and reach out those who are dying in the IDP centers in Meghaleh. Members of the association had to stay with Tigray television and said this.
ብዙሕ ነገር እዮም ተጸጊሞም ለለው
Children and adults with chronic illness are experiencing a difficult situation. Besides, lack of food is also aggravating their problem.
ንጎይ ምሸቲ እንየዎም መድኃኒት ዞምና ሽኮር መርፍእ እንየዎም
They have medications to take regularly. Diabetic patients must also take injections daily, though they need selected food that can match with medicines they take. It is difficult to afford. As a solution, we are trying to collect TAFE flour and prepare it here for the children who are suffering from cancer like Ilham. She has missed her regular medicine twice due to the lack of medication supply. And also, we couldn't access the money deposit in banks due to the total siege in Tigray.
ናዞም ሽኳርያ በተለይ ጠሚዎም ብቻ ይሆን ይዝወድቁ
Diabetic patients do faint onto the ground, not because they're just diabetic, but also if they eat food items which contain sugar, including wheat. But they do eat wheat when they have no option. Henceforth, we are mobilizing resources from charitable organizations to feed such people the medical appropriate food types to the best level of our capacity.
Members of the Hidrona Charity Association called on the international community to understand the worsening humanitarian crisis in Tigray and act as soon as possible to harness the man-made hunger.
ዲያስፖራታት እዮም ልሕጉዝና ነይሮም ሪሶርስና ና መጀመሪያ ማለት እዩ
Members of the Tigray diaspora started to help, but now the help from the diaspora has been discontinued due to the network and the communication blackout. Thus, we call on the international community to put pressure on Abiy Ahmed's government to lift the siege so that we can be able to reinstate the help.
ገበርቲ ሰናይ ዝኾንኩም
Life savings assistance to the needy in Tigray as soon as possible, because hunger doesn't give time, it kills.
The IDPs further expressed that Abiy Ahmed's government and his allies are using all the packages of genocide to exterminate Tigrayans from the surface of the earth.
Olusegun Obasanjo, former president of Nigeria and current AU High Representative for the Horn of Africa, in a recent address to the Peace and Security Council of the African Union, calls for the immediate commencement of an all-inclusive national dialogue in Ethiopia. In his address, the special representative highlighted that he had had the opportunity to meet with Abiy Ahmed and the government of Tigray and was able to reach an understanding that their differences are political and it requires a political solution. It is to be recalled that the Ethiopian government had rejected repeated attempts by the government of Tigray for a peaceful end to this conflict. Obasanjo urged the parties to come to the negotiating table and for immediate and unhindered humanitarian access, as well as compliance with all international humanitarian and human rights law. The special representatives had visited Tigray's capital, Mekelle, this past weekend and met with President Debretsion Gebremichael. Last Wednesday, Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, a state-appointed body, and the United Nations released their findings on their joint investigation on atrocities committed in Tigray. The joint investigation was opposed by the government of Tigray and Tigrayan activists across the world due to concerns about the impartiality of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. Our reporter Winta Kidana, has more on that.
The investigation, which was demanded by the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission's formal request to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to conduct a joint investigation with it into alleged human rights violations and abuses and violations of international humanitarian law committed in the context of the conflict in Tigray took place between May 16 and August 31, 2021, which means that due to the all-encompassing siege on Tigray that has blocked all transport coming into and out of Tigray and a complete communication blackout, investigators had access into Tigray for just 1 month during their 3-month-long investigation, leading to one of the clearest shortcomings of the investigation, which is that it covered just 9 towns and cities in Tigray. The cities are Mekelle, Woro, Samra and nearby areas, Alamata, Bora, Maicho, Dansha, Maikadra, and Humera. Ghent University, a university in Belgium, recently produced a map of recorded atrocities in Tigray. The university was able to record over 1,164 fully documented casualties committed in different parts of Tigray. According to this map, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the United Nations investigative team visited areas where just 0.77% of victims of recorded atrocities are found. Not to mention that the cities were under the hostile control of Ethiopian forces, especially Humera, Maikadra and Dansha, still under the hostile control of Amhara militia that have committed ethnic cleansing, removing almost all of the Tigrayan population and resettling a new community. And even the place where the investigators were able to travel, interviewees declined to be interviewed because of the presence of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission personnel. In addition to the defect of involving the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission in the investigation, the report says the joint investigation team wasn't able to provide women-only investigating teams in interviews of victims of sexual violence, and some victims expressed preference not to hold an interview in the presence of men. Mabrahatu Fatuwe is the director of the Free Air Clinic at Mekelle University. He says witnesses had been abused and intimidated by police in Mekelle during the time not to share their truths.
The survivors of sexual violence in one-stop center, they were being intimidated by the police force in Mekelle. The police, some of the police men in Mekelle were being sent to one-stop center to intimidate them, not to tell the reality to the investigating team.
Like I said, comforted at least by the fact that the civilian casualty that was feared to unfold did not really rose to the level that it was originally feared to be.
This is Daniel Bakala. He is the head of Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. In January 6, 2021, while Tigray was still under a communications blackout in media and human rights groups were barred from entering Tigray and very little information was available about the horrors unfolding, he made this statement reiterating government talking points and assist in reinvigorating Abiy Ahmed's image on the world stage that has suffered a major blow after denying aid organization and media access into Tigray and repeatedly denying the presence of Eritrean soldiers in Tigray. It would take a big heart to put a faith that Daniel Bakala would reach in a finding that would contradict his initial point of view. After hundreds of women were gang raped, almost all clinics, hospitals, schools, factories and other properties destroyed, ethnic cleansing and hundreds of civilians murdered brutally, the fact that the commissioner had said that it wasn't as it was feared raises a question of what was feared or planned. Martin Plaud, a keen observer of Ethiopian politics, has also expressed his cynicism by likening the involvement of Daniel in the investigation to a student marking their own homework. The point here is crystal clear. If the findings of an investigation are to be accepted, it is very critical that the investigation has to be done by a body that all parties trust.
The Ethiopian government, led by Abiy Ahmed Ali, has perpetrated countless brutalities ranging from massacres of civilians to full-scale encirclement that blocked entry of all essentials and life-saving aids to Tigray. This attempt to isolate Tigray from the world has caused unimaginable suffering, ranging from the shutdown of health facilities and the complete depletion of all food stocks. Our reporter, Abraha Gabriel has more on that.
It has been a year since Ethiopian troops, Amhara militia and Fano, as well as Eritrean troops, launched a genocidal war on Tigray. Higher government officials, artists, military commanders, religious leaders, including bishops, all combined to defame the people of Tigray and create an almost satanic image in the minds of the Ethiopian people, and thereby mobilize all able-bodied Ethiopians against Tigray. Dr. Mengistu Arafine, Deputy Director of Tigray Institute of Policy Studies, says what unfolded in Tigray is clearly genocide.
ትንሽ ግጭት ያጋጠመ አይደለም በቃ ልክ እንደ ጠላት ተፈርጀን
They don't treat us as a part of Ethiopia's federal arrangement. Ethiopians that happen to disagree with the federal government's policies. We are seen as enemies. Higher government officials have publicly and on state media said that we don't deserve to live and we should be eliminated. What they are doing is, without any doubt, genocide. No further research is needed. They are openly admitting that we must vanish.
Dr. Mengistu says the targeting of Tigrayans has not been isolated to Tigray, but is being done across all parts of Ethiopia, including Addis Ababa.
በትግራይ ህዝብ ያለው ጥላቻ በትግራይ ውስጥ ያለውን የትግራይ ህዝብ ብቻ የተወሰነ አይደለም።
The hatred towards the people of Tigray is not isolated to Tigrayans living on Tigray. but against all Tigrans living across the country and Addis Ababa. Tigrans who live in different parts of Ethiopia are being tortured, imprisoned and killed brutally. They are being displaced from their jobs and their properties looted and destroyed publicly, and their businesses are being closed for the mere fact that they are Tigrans.
The federal government also excluded Tigray from 2019-20 budget allocation with anonymous vote of the House of People's Representative and House of Federation.
Budget የኛ ነው ማንም የሚሰጠን አይደለም
Budget is ours by right. It is not something granted by somebody else as a favor. It is what we equally contribute as a taxpayers with other Ethiopians to be distributed back to all regions by the federal government proportionally according to population and other criteria. The implication of denying us of such rights is self-explanatory. The government also terminated safety net, which means people who had been dependent on it would die.
The people of Tigray who withstood unjust treatment by the federal government and persevered were yet again rewarded with unjustified bombardments and military airstrikes instead of giving the people seeds and fertilizers to worsen the problem. The school children were massacred by ruthless Ethiopian and Eritrean troops while the survivors remain out of school. Livestock were either slaughtered or starved to death as all their food was burned. To add injury to insult, the federal government blocked public infrastructure to systematically starve the people of Tigray and thereby eliminate them. Dr. Fisaha Habtatsyan, director at Tigray Institute of Policy Studies, says Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki conspired to eliminate the people of Tigray by keeping the people under complete siege in hope of exterminating them without the world's awareness.
ቤት ዘግተው ሚዲያ ቴሌኮም
Houses closed. Media and telecom blocked to prevent information leakage to the world. They wanted to eliminate our people in silence without the knowledge of anyone. They wanted to publish our elimination on a newspaper and separate the world. But all of a sudden, the situation slipped out of the grips of Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki's hands. They have not yet awakened from their dreams. Their wickedness is their character and they will not change. They still feel that they can eliminate us.
Ato Tesfaye Taddese is a political analyst and he says the government of Ethiopia betrayed the people of Tigray by refusing access to their saving accounts and thereby starving them to death.
ንብረት ከተዘረፈና አንቺ እንድትራቢ
If your properties are looted and if you are denied access to your money deposited in banks that you trust, this means the government is committing betrayal.
Not only has the government of Ethiopia denied budget and access to public amenities to the people of Tigray, but it blocked entry of humanitarian aid, which is obviously provided by the international community.
ይሄ ብቻ አይደለም የውጭ ዜጎች ከየኛ መንግስት ከምንለው በላይ አዝነው humanitarian.
Not only this, the international community sympathized with the people of Tigray more than Abiy Ahmed and its government. They decided humanitarian aid must reach Tigray and came up with many trucks full of medicine, food and non-food items, which unfortunately remain blocked by the federal government and its allies. The purpose is crystal clear that Abiy Ahmed and his allies wanted to weaken the people of Tigray using hunger and denial of medication as a weapon of war, and thus have the people bow to his throne in the expense of the culture and identity of the people that they proudly belong to. They will continue doing this to the limit of their potential.
The government of Ethiopia continued to disappoint the world by allotting national budget to wage a war against the people of Tigray, using all the weapons he has and even borrowing technological weapons from foreign countries to perpetrate the unprecedented atrocities on the people of Tigray. In addition to all military brutalities that have been committed against the people of Tigray, it is true that the people of Tigray are now suffering due to the siege that cuts the people off from all public services such as banks, telecommunication, electricity, transportation, and the like.
The attack on Tigray's health system started long before November 4, when in addition to discontinuing the government's budget, and the Ethiopian government discontinued the entry of all medical supplies into Tigray, including COVID test kits. Now health facilities across Tigray are running out of all medical facilities in Tigray, and pharmacies are being forced to close shop. For more, Bethlehem Ayala reports.
It's been over a year since the Ethiopian government started to block essential medical supplies from coming into Tigray, but the blockage has tightened since the end of June, with the complete shutdown of public services, aid, and all commercial goods from coming into Tigray. We are at Kanema Pharmacy. It's one of the largest pharmacies in the city, providing medication to many at reasonable price. The pharmacy is now almost completely depleted.
Just a year back, this pharmacy used to be one of the largest in Mekelle and its surroundings. People used to come here from different areas to buy their medication. Now it is empty, and so we have to close it.
It has been difficult to get medication into Tigray for 2 to 3 years now, but it's been much worse this time around.
The shelf was full of antibiotics, but now it's empty. And the shelf was full of medicines as well. And this one is full of empty boxes because we have nothing to put.
Those most affected by the lack of medication are, of course, the patients who suffer from wide-ranging medical issues, including chronic illnesses.
I am diabetic. I need my medication if I'm going to survive, but I'm not able to find it in any pharmacy in Mekelle. No one with diabetes in Mekelle is able to get their medication. People are suffering.
I came here to buy medicine after I asked other pharmacies, and they suggest that I came here because they didn't have it with them. Unfortunately, they didn't have it here either. People are not getting the medicine that they need.
The blockage of humanitarian corridors goes against the international norms and standards that requires the government to protect civilians in times of war. But the world has remained silent as food, medical supplies, and public services have been weaponized by the Ethiopian government.
That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Do stay and enjoy the rest of the program.